Hi there, everyone. Has everyone got pizza, drinks? Get started.
Help yourselves.
Well, thanks for coming. My name's Nick, and I'm a developer here at Oracle. I'm not sure how many of you know much about Oracle, but I'll give the marketing spiel. See if I can make sure I get all the SEO keywords in, the proper videos for when we upload it later. Oracle are the UK's largest mobile app development company. We specialise in native and hybrid app development. We've started branching out recently into some exciting areas, IoT, AR, did a bit of blockchain. We've got a few companies under the umbrella now, so we're kind of starting to pool a lot of the resources together. So we're starting to get some pretty interesting clients, some pretty interesting work coming along as well. Always looking for good developers and engineers and marketing. So if you're interested, we do have a newsletter. So if you're interested, it's oracle.com/subscribe. I believe you get a monthly email with some exciting news, and basically tells you more about these kind of events coming up. We've done a few of them now, quite a wide range of topics as well. So I'll hand over to the guys in a wee while, and they'll be able to introduce and explain a little bit more. But we've done blockchain in the past. What else have we done? We've had Alexa. We had an Alexa one a few months back. So yeah, quite wide and varied. So yeah, get yourself on the mailing list. We are now GDPR compliant as well. So another tick in the box. The reason we do these is we like collaboration, and we like meeting interested people, getting them in the room, talking tech, innovating, and basically just, as Chris Martin, our CEO, would say, just having fun, doing a good job, and then going home happy. And so far, we seem to be doing an alright job at it. Most of the clients seem happy. I'm sure we can make the ones that aren't ecstatic happy eventually. But that's the joys of agency work. So yeah. Before we go into the really good bits of the night, and I don't mean the pizza and the beer, there's a bit of housekeeping at the bottom, but the toilets are just at the back there, left and right. Make sure you don't go in the wrong one. The fire exits, one is downstairs where you come in, the other one is the first door past the pizza. So if you're the last one out, take the pizza with you. I don't want to let it go to waste. So yeah, if you hear the fire alarm, it sounds like a fire alarm, just make your way to the exit. Toilets, yeah. Newsletter. So yeah, without further ado, I'll hand over to Andrew and Kunal. They're from Microsoft, if you weren't too sure. As I said, we're Oracle, so it's ticking all the boxes here. Like I say, they'll introduce themselves. They'll give a brief overview of the kind of talks and demos that we'll do tonight, and I'll get out of the way. We'll take a break before 7 o'clock. There should be some pizza left, some beers, drinks and stuff. And then we'll reconvene just after 7 o'clock, and just before 8 o'clock, just when the talks are finished, we'll do a Q&A session. The guys will let you know if they'd like to take questions during or after the presenter's choice. But yeah, if you don't want to speak in front of everyone during the break, come and find someone. I won't know the answers, so I ask you to talk to the presenters. And yeah, if you've got any questions or anything, we'll do that at the end. But yeah, I'll hand over to Andrew first.
Yeah.
Cheers, man.
Evening, everybody. So yeah, we'll do some quick intros first to make it easy. So my name is Andrew McFarlane. I'm a newbie at Microsoft. I've been at Microsoft for 8 months. And I am an architecture manager, which means I've got lots of clever people who work for me and make me look good. I work in what we class as enterprise services in our data and AI domain. Okay, so we have approximately 300 consultants, architects, engineers, who by and large work with enterprise scale customers delivering AI projects, hence why we're here to talk to you today. Kunal, do you want to give a quick 30 seconds on your background?
So I'm Kunal Babre. I work as an application development manager within Microsoft. So my team, we have around 30 people in UK. We engage deeply with lots of customers around all over UK with a dev-focused audience to help them make best use of our technology. So whether it's implementing DevOps, whether it's implementing, doing proof of concept for some of the things that customers are working on, or whether it's consultancy, any of those engagements I will get to.
Cool. That's cool. So in terms of agenda, we've got kind of 5 sessions that we want to go through. So one is a machine learning and AI overview. I wasn't sure about the relative experience and backgrounds of the people in the room, so we've gone with a sort of high level on, here's what AI is, here's what ML is, and here's what deep learning is, just so that we can maybe set a bit of context into the differences and where they come from. We'll then kick off into an overview of the services that the machine learning services that Microsoft offers on Azure, and that'll be done by Kunal. We'll then actually do a live demo. So against our better judgment of working with kids, animals, and live demos, we will try and do one. So we've got our fingers crossed it'll work. And then I'll wrap it up with a section on ethics, because as Microsoft, it's a subject that's very, very close to how we deliver our projects, how we work with our customers, to make sure that we're doing things in the most ethical way possible. We've got a Q&A at the end, but from my side, quite happy to field questions as long as they're easy during the session. So if you've got one, feel free just to shout out and ask, and we'll do our best to answer. If not, we will of course take it away and come back with a better answer from somebody else. On a personal level, one thing that's really interesting for me is presenting at something like Oracle as a Microsoft person. I think probably many would think actually maybe 5 years ago would you have seen Microsoft doing this type of stuff? And I guess from our side as Microsoft, it's just to get over that, from our CEO level down with Satya, third-party applications are first-party applications to us. We don't distinguish. We're not, precious about stuff. If we've got good apps that customers want to use, that give value, they're welcome as first-party. So really keen to, and glad to be here with you guys. Okay, so let's crack on. So ML and AI. Buzzwords, I'm guessing everybody's heard of AI, and every second thing you read on LinkedIn, if you're on LinkedIn, is probably about AI, as somebody tries to sell you the next greatest thing, which could well be us. However, when we look at the market, and our analysts look at the market, nigh on 4 trillion is what we see it being by 2022. And even for a company like Microsoft, this is where our big bets are going. Okay, so yes, cloud was one, but AI, intelligent edge with IoT, this is where Microsoft is placing its bets. That's across a number of areas. You can see the breakdown. It's actually pretty even, actually. The decision side of the business, up here, takes up just over 60% of it when I looked at the exact numbers. Virtual agents, so bots, things like voice to text, and then smart products. And I guess that's one thing I'm keen to share as we go through. I know we've got some in Kunal stuff, but some of the actual real life use cases that we do. So some of the ones could be quite interesting, like fridge manufacturers putting cameras in their fridge to work out what you've got in it when it goes out of date. Tell me to get new stuff. Things like our augmented reality with HoloLens, where we do predictive maintenance and detecting failures, but then sending our engineers with their headsets on where they can talk back to another engineer back at base. And that really falls in the smart products area. So a lot of really quite, what I would think are quite sexy and interesting use cases. Now, so tell me, differences between AI, ML and deep learning. This might be teaching you subjects, I don't know, so let's cover it anyway. First and foremost, AI is a very, very broad topic, and we are only, and I mean this, only scratching the subject, or scratching the surface. I'm not a PhD mathematician or anything like that, but the concept of having general versus applied AI is a real barrier that we need to get over with people. The concept that the robots are taking over, we are so far from that happening, it's unbelievable. Okay, and I think whilst there's all this hype and it's great, it helps make a market, we also need to be realistic with our customers that actually what we can achieve, what they can achieve, is very much in this applied AI or narrow AI banner. And this is where ultimately we as people teach computers to perform repetitive tasks that humans currently do. Okay, it's no more glamorous, no more sexy than that, but really it's taking about one well-defined specific task and taking it away from a human and getting a computer to do it. In terms of generalized AI and why we're not there, it's because it requires a level of emotion, a level of intelligence, creativity, all of these soft skills that computers don't have. Yeah? And being frank, it's going to be hand on heart, not even the next 50 years will this not be cracked. But anyway, this is why we have the exhibit in the market. And then what comes after that is machine learning. Okay, so it's a subset of AI. Okay, that they are hugely related, but it's not something different. So when people say AI and machine learning, it's not. Machine learning is a subset of AI, and it's a subset of applied AI. And then we really get deep into what we would say is deep learning, and that's something that you might hear about things like is used in all of the face recognition stuff. Basically anything where we've got huge volumes of data, deep learning is really a killer on those types of applications. Okay, so some good examples and some background. Machine learning, self-adaptive, as the name suggests. They do learn, they do get better as they get more experienced, much like humans. Some good examples: fraud detection. So I guess most of you have had the alerts from your bank. You get a text message, you get on a phone call. Every single bank will be using machine learning for those purposes. And I guess this ties into this sort of timeline at the bottom. Machine learning actually started off about 1950. 1980, ML came really to the fore as sort of computing caught up. And then today, we do have the deep learning paradigms. And really that's through the advent of cheap cloud storage, cheap cloud compute, and I guess investment from the market and technology companies because of those things coming to a head that mean they can actually make progress in these areas where they haven't before. And I guess the great example I've got of this is the company that I used to work for. It's actually the largest analytics provider in the world, an independent company. And this is what they've been doing since, it's actually 1974. They've been doing machine learning since then, and that's my whole background as a consultant. It just hasn't had the market, hype, the market talk about it, because of we've not had the compute power, the cheap storage to make it go as fast and as far as we do today. Deep learning, again, this really is it's another branch of AI. It's not separate, it falls under it, but it very much is specifically to do with neural networks. So very deep hierarchies, facial recognition, text translation, extending recommendation systems beyond some of the simple rules-based ones that you probably see. But it's, as we go to the next slide, when I think about what machine learning has taught me, or what I like to bring back to is these quotes from Herbert Simon. He's a Turing Award winner, but the top one is the one for me. It's learning is the process by which a system improves from experience, and that's where deep learning, we find so many use cases for deep learning in our customers. Yes, we do machine learning stuff as we do the maturity model about where you are, where you want to go to. Machine learning is the natural place to start from. But with deep learning, we really get into the sort of nub of business value, because actually the more data we give it, the more we run it, the larger the problem, the better the results we tend to get. And it really is a a game changer for Microsoft, for our customers. And it's something that we're really keen to do more about. So, with that, I'll bring up some quick patterns just to try and set the scene before Kunal goes into a sort of insight into some of the services that we've got on offer. But I guess, some good examples here that I'd like to highlight of use cases. One is Daimler or Mercedes-Benz. All of their new vans that they build are all connected to Azure IoT Hub. Okay, so every single new van that they build and release in Germany or from Germany is connected to us to do things like predictive asset maintenance. We've got sensors that do analytics on the actual van themselves. We also do collation and analysis of that offline to predict when failures are going to occur, when they come for servicing. Things like usage patterns of devices on the vans. What do people actually use? What commercially makes sense? Do they stop putting specific feature and functions on their vans? All of that data we aggregate and we stream billions of records, hundreds of gigabytes a day out of those vans. And it's some of those things that perhaps people don't immediately recognise or see as sexy because it might not be customer facing. But it really does, for our customers, give them a market advantage.
Is that part of the support contract that like the person that buys the van has, or is it like?
No, it's part of what you get with the van.
Right,
correct.
right.
No, it does last. I think it's 3 years is what they're going for under the
Mhm.
support contract. So you've probably seen. There's also a move. This is going on a different tangent, but things like where vehicle manufacturers are maybe doing subscription-based services in their cars as well. So some of the features that you might take for granted when you buy something might not always be there. This is very much of that same opinion because it's designed for fleet purchasers, for people that turn over their vans on a fairly frequent basis because of the high volume. Not so much about, in the nicest possible way, the man with the van type model. I mentioned some other ones, so things like the HoloLens is a public reference case with Krupp, it's the elevator company. So again, where we can basically show up schematics on HoloLens as people do engineering work, and that then can connect back to equally skilled or more skilled engineers off site to help people in the field do stuff. Things like workforce planning, workforce optimization, smart buildings, where people sit, where when we analyse communications between people, and I'll talk about ethics later on, but where do we get the best bang for the buck for those communications? Where are the networking hotspots? Who are your biggest influencers within your company, not just outside in social media? So there's a whole plethora of use cases that we've got. We'll show some highlights again at the end of the session on where you can go and read some more stuff. But with that, any questions before I hand over to Kunal? No? Okay. Kunal? Not yet.
So I think same as Andrew, you can ask any questions. So far as you don't ask me, why does it not work in IE? That's fine. Okay, so I think I'm going to cover AI platform, and I think we'll look into two things. We'll look into machine learning, and I've taken the stance, we'll go into basics of machine learning, what it is, and then how it relates to the Microsoft platform and what you can do with the platform. So we'll start with machine learning. What does that mean? What does there's this analogy of writing program to write a program, and what does that mean? Cognitive services, where do they settle? How can I use them? What does that mean? We'll take a break. We'll look into machine learning studio. So this is a drag and drop kind of a UI we got. You can quickly build machine learning models. I will show you how you can do that, and also you can try it. There is a free model where you can go and just play with it. And then AI platform. This is where how overall Microsoft things stack together. So Microsoft services, Microsoft infrastructure, and tools. How do they stack together? So we'll start with the initial one, which is traditional programming model versus machine learning programming model. And I'm a developer by background, so for me it's always trying to think, what does it mean? I can program computers, so what does it mean? When we talk about machine learning. So traditionally, if you think about it, we start with data. We have program, we write program, give it to computer, it processes it, and we have an output. Quite straightforward model. Now, if you take that with the machine learning angle to it, one of the challenges we have before I go there is there are lots of programs to be written. Might be face recognition, might be one of the complex programs. There are lots of complex programs to be written. We don't have sufficient people actually who can write that programs for us. Also, I think we generate something like 1 quintillion, I think it was quintillion bytes of data information every day. I think it's like almost 2.5 billion gigabytes, which is pretty big number. So that much information is getting generated every day. So can we use that information actually to help us, rather than we trying to figure out everything ourselves, writing program ourselves? Can we use that? So this is where I think the way I think about machine learning helps. So we almost invert the model. So we say we have a data, and we have outputs in that data. Not necessarily defined, but sometimes it is defined. We pass it to computer and ask computer, can you write program for me? So this is the data, this is the output, can you generate program for me? And that's pretty much what, in a nutshell, what we do with the machine learning. If I go to the next one here, some of the applications of machine learning, I think I touched on some of these. Search engines, we use them every day. What pages to be, there's a ranking of search, a ranking of the pages, what pages are shown on the top, how likely are you to click on certain ads, all those things, there is a machine learning involved in that. Finance, fraud detection, whether to give you credit or not, all those kind of activities are, again, there is a machine learning involved in that. If you think of e-commerce, there are several use cases in e-commerce. Cross sales, when I go to buy something, when I add, let's say, a tweed jacket, what should I show? Tweed tie or shoes, or what's the right thing to show? And this is again where the machine learning can help. Code editors, and we are seeing this more and more in dev tools as well. So code editor is one of the good examples. So in Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code, for example, we introduced something called IntelliCode. And what we have done there is we have looked at GitHub repos from, I think, 2,000 plus projects, which have 100 plus stars. So they're good projects, good practices in that. And tried to reverse engineer that, build a model around it, and said, okay, what are the things people are trying to do? So in this example, when you say path dot something, instead of just showing you alphabetical list, it's showing you exactly what might be more relevant in your context. So it's showing you substring, and we saw that in there. So I'll let it play again in case it's goes. So let's just look. So if you look at this, it's looking at what you're doing before, and it's based on what you're doing. It kind of knows what you're trying to do with it. So it shows you stars in there, which shows this is what most likely actions you're going to take, based on your previous line of code. And this is just start of it. So there are lots of other things within, within the product. We are improving those using AI and using machine learning to do this. Robotics and space exploration. Then there are a whole heap of use cases. I think we can talk about them forever in that sense.
Sorry, that code editor using AI.
Yes, it is. So it's using so IntelliCode. What they have done is they have looked into GitHub repos for more than 2,000 projects, which have 100 plus stars. That means these are good, the projects which are taking following good practices, and then that looks into that has created a model. So our data scientists have created a model, which then allows us to.
So that means it recommends you the best practices as well.
Yes. So then I was showing just one feature, but there are more than one feature. If you look at IntelliCode, there are lots of features.
I guess it's one of those good examples that the more data you feed it, the better and better it gets. Yeah? So the more projects that you add that go into that training set for what you get presented, better and better and better it becomes over time.
Absolutely. So it's interesting, and it applies to us day to day. So that's pretty good. So let's look at the machine learning kind of. Let's open the instance. You start with data. I mentioned data and output. Might be you don't necessarily have them separate. You have data and you expect data is has lots of patterns within the data. So might be if it is a pictures, there are lots of pictures identifying certain characteristics. Then you run an algorithm on top of it, and there are several algorithms, and you hear about things like deep neural networks or clustering algorithm or all of those different algorithms which you come across. So you kind of figure out which algorithm is going to be right for this kind of data. Now, some people write those algorithms. There are some algorithms which lots of organizations have written. So Microsoft, we have a whole heap of algorithms which you can use out of box. If you choose, you can write your own as well. So the main idea there is you want to identify the patterns, find the patterns within the data. How can I do that? Once you're done that, then you want to, what it generates is a model, which is a program which I was talking about. So this model is now able to recognize the pattern. So if I was taking example of, let's say, a fruit, a model to detect fruit, and might be banana is my favorite fruit, and I want to detect when the banana is in the picture. I would train the model with lots of pictures of banana. Might be banana with apple, banana in the different backgrounds, whatever it is. I would train that using the algorithms. Once it's trained, that model should be able to, whenever I present it with a picture of banana, it should be able to tell me it's banana or not banana, and how much confidence it has on that. So that's what typically the recognition and the pattern works. Now, if I go to the next, once this model is built, and you want to make sure your applications can consume them. So this is just a program, right? This is just an API. I want to now call that. So my application. So let's say you have an iOS app, and where you want to say banana detection app, for example. So you want that to be able to consumable. So you should be able to consume that either as API or as an embedded model. The process of getting the data, finding the pattern in the data is called training in machine learning. So when we say we are training the model, this is what we're doing. We are kind of giving it more data. The more data you got, the better the model. Okay. So then cognitive services. What does that? Where does that sit? So cognitive services, if we think about it, what we did was we have lots and lots of data in Bing. So lots of images, lots of images around, as an example. So we did that work on analyzing, what that means, whether it's a picture of, let's say, a cat or a dog or a human being or whatever. So we have built those models already for us to use, and then we decided to expose it publicly as a cognitive service. So what that means is we have done this hard work. You can use that models to kind of detect. So for example, if you want to build an app to detect an emotion, let's say when somebody's feeling sad, you want to detect that emotion, you could use that service. So as an app developer, I don't have to be a data scientist or person who has all this data or go on the exercise of collecting all this data just to be able to do this, just to build this in my app. So that's something you can do. Now, cognitive services itself, so there are several, and we'll talk about it, there are several different services which we have kind of deployed. This is all hosted in Azure. So what does that mean? So these are the services which can be consumed as APIs. This is hosted on highly scalable platform, which probably means is, if you think about it, if your app is making one call every second or 10,000 calls every second, that should be able to handle it without any issues. Okay.
So how do I know the data matches what is related to my business? Because you're adding that section.
Mm-hmm.
So how do the data you use to train the machine, how do I know, is that data relevant to my data?
Yes, that's a good question. So there are some models which are generic, we'll talk about them. And then there are sometimes some models, so for example, there is a speech detection, I'll talk about it, where you might have generic speech detection where you talk about it and it kind of tries to analyze it. But there might be jargons in your industry. So for example, there might be, in financial sector, you might have specific terms like, credit and debit. They have specific context. So you want to train the model to work with your data, and you can do that as well. So that's where you bring your custom data. So that's again one of the things it offers.
It's a bit we'll touch on just briefly when you get to the ethics section at the end to say that actually is one of the biggest problems is that training data. How do you make sure you've got the right training data? It's non-biased. That actually is going to deliver an outcome that you expect. So it's a very topical question.
And again, this cognitive services, if you think about it, there are different kind of different types of services we offer. So one is vision. So vision is trying to look at things like emotions. I want to detect emotions of the person, whether happy, sad. There are lots of applications around it. People with autism, for example, struggle with emotions. If I'm talking to you and I'm on the autism spectrum, I might struggle to understand how you feel about it. So that might help you to actually augment that piece. You're saying this person is feeling sad or this person is feeling happy. As an example, then it could be things like face detections, which are quite straightforward, but they are quite widely used. It also can be used for content moderation. If you think about it, I might have a site, I might have an app. People submit feedback. I want to analyze the sentiment of those. I want to see whether there are negative feedbacks. If people are submitting pictures, are there any racy content in there? Is it safe to publish? Now there are a lot of people. There is a human element to it. Of course, humans would moderate some of this. When you're publishing pictures back out, but this takes away a lot of overhead of processing, and it will highlight some of the things you should definitely very wary. Then the next section is the speech one. So speech could be simplest thing could be text to speech and speech to text. But then it could also be like fingerprint. Your voice is unique. Everybody's voice is unique. So you could actually use speaker identification. So you can say who's speaking based on how you train the model. You can say this is Kunal speaking or this is somebody else speaking, you could do that. You could do speaker identification. Now again, I don't have to be a data scientist. As a programmer, I could just use that API, train it and use it for my app. That is pretty good. Then I could look into language. So language could be things like sentiment analysis. So when I have a string of text, whether it's positive sentiment, negative sentiment, quickly analyze that. If you think of our databases are filled with lots and lots of text, it would be good to and lots of comments and lots of things. It would be good to quickly analyze, from marketing perspective, what kind of feedback are we getting on the product, how much positive, how much negative sentiments are there. Bots we are not touching on today, but bots again, is allowing you to have natural conversations with systems. Now, when I say get, can I have a pizza for 2 and whatever with this toppings and so on, so it's quite easy for me as a human being to process that, because we kind of learn in that way. We can understand language, the machine cannot understand in the same way. So how do we train machine to understand those phrases and extract key pieces of information from it? So this is where the Lewis is one of the services we offer, where you can go and train the service and to extract specific entities from those conversations. Then think of knowledge. Knowledge could be things like Q&A makers, so question and answer. So a lot of companies have Q&A FAQs on the site. Now, if you want to build a bot, which can and I think this was one of the real cases which I was speaking to customer. So a lot of the time, one of the customer, big retailer in the UK, one of the first questions their customer asks them is, where is my order? That's quite a straightforward question, and if you can quickly understand the intent of it, and it's not exactly the same format they might ask the question, they might ask it in a lot of different ways. If you can understand that, and if you can reverse engineer quickly say, okay, this is what the customer is trying to do, I can automatically give him the answer. That could save them a lot of manpower, trying to just answer those questions. Search could be another one. If you think of it, things like auto suggestions in search side of things. So when I try Google or Bing, when you try to search something, it shows you auto suggestions, and those are based on some kind of a machine learning that's happening in the background that's saying, oh, when you type this is what you're trying to, this is what is intentional. So you can implement those without actually having to build a model yourselves. You could actually implement search within applications quite out of box. And then there are labs which you would see in the site where we are doing some experimental stuff, where things are in beta or we are testing those out. So if you want to play around with some of these things, I think there was a project Abu Dhabi which was trying to find the distance between 2 points with some kind of cool, it finds a lot of different routes and stuff like that. So lots of things like that, which are in experimental phase, which might get promoted, which might get demoted, but if you want to play with that, you can do that. I mentioned some of the names, but this is a list, and I don't think we should go through every item in the list. I'm sure you can look at the website and we can go through some of this. But your question, going back to your question, so there are trained models which use data we got, and of course sometimes we are continuously learning as well, so we're continuously improving those algorithms. But then there are some use cases where you want your data. So for example, you want to identify a person, and to identify a person, might be you need your data, because you can identify, might be celebrities because that's something we train, but it won't identify me because it doesn't know me. So you can use your data to actually train the model for your purpose. This is where you bring your custom data. Same with speech, same with knowledge and other pieces. Any questions before I move from here? Sure. So let's look at the emotion API. So when I pass the picture to the emotion API, it can detect how many people are in that. It can tell me, I think around 8 or 9 different parameters, what is the emotion in this picture. So whether it's showing me happiness to be 1%, it's very confident it's happy, might be. It's also looking at some other things, sadness, 9.3. So it's looking at these numbers and it will give you how likely this person in this particular emotion is. And this is kind of showing you only one array, but you would have 2 arrays for each of the person there. So you could say exactly which emotion is for which person. It also draws the boxes saying this is where the face is what I'm seeing.
And there's actually an app out there, a good demo one, it's called Seeing AI, in which you can try some of the stuff for.
I'm going to demo that.
You're going to demo? Okay.
Yep, fair enough. The other is face API. Again, it's able to detect, whether it's a man or a woman, what's the head pose and all those kind of things. You might want it in your apps. If you're building some smart apps, you might want that in your app. And just to give that example in real life, Uber did that. So Uber, what they did was they used kind of face APIs, where drivers, for example, you want to verify the driver who is driving the car is the same person who is registered, for driving the car. So actually, on the ad hoc basis, they come up with this pop-up saying, can you verify yourself? And so they could verify it in the app itself. Now the team I think within 30 days, team was able to roll out this implementation across the Uber, in US. So again, this is something quite easy to build. This is safe for both passengers as well as the drivers, right? So identity theft and all those kind of things. Okay, so moving on from here. There's also Ocr API, and I think we take this for granted, but there are things like this, you could pass it a picture with text and it will detect those things for you. So things like, I think it's saying life, it's related to word life, and it's drawing boxes around those saying this is what I'm seeing in this particular text. Now, there is an interesting example. I think US government released this JFK files, all the information related to JFK assassination. And there are lots and lots of material that was released. I think around 10,000 pages documents. So if you think of it like this big heap of text. Now, a lot of it was not a lot of it was digitized. A lot of it was text. A lot of it had kind of certain special characters and texts and references. I'm gonna give you the pointer. Let's say if time permits. But so one of the team members did build an app which basically brings all this information together and uses lots of these different services to quickly search. So you can say JFK, what all relates to his killer and then who is related, and you can see the graphs, and it's building all this using services. It's a pretty cool app, and it's also open source. So if you want to play and if you want to hack around, you can do that as well. I think we talked about text analytics, so sentiment analysis. So it could give you score. So anything more than 0.5 is saying it's positive sentiment in general. Things like that. I'd like to play a video here.
I'm Saqib Sheikh. I lost my sight when I was 7, and shortly after that I went to a school for the blind, and that's where I was introduced to talking computers, and that really opened up a whole new world of opportunities. I joined Microsoft 10 years ago as a software engineer. I love making things which improve people's lives, and one of the things I've always dreamt of since I was at university was this idea of something that could tell you at any moment what's going on around you.
I think it's a man jumping in the air doing a trick on a skateboard.
I teamed up with like-minded engineers to make an app which lets you know who and what is around you. It's based on top of the Microsoft Intelligence APIs, which makes it so much easier to make this kind of thing. The app runs on smartphones, but also on the Pivot Head smart glasses. When you're talking to a bigger group, sometimes you can talk and there's no response, and you think, is everyone listening really well, or are they half asleep? And you never know.
Anybody else?
I see two faces. 40-year-old man with a beard looking surprised. 20-year-old woman looking happy.
The app can describe the general age and gender of the people around me and what their emotions are, which is incredible. One of the things that's most useful about the app is the ability to read out text.
Hello, good afternoon. Here's your menu.
Great, thank you. I can use the app on my phone to take a picture of the menu, and it's going to guide me on how to take that correct photo.
Move camera to the bottom right and away from the document.
And then it'll recognize the text. Read me the headings.
I see appetizers, salads, paninis, pizzas, pastas.
Years ago, this was science fiction. I never thought it would be something that you could actually do, but artificial intelligence is improving at an ever faster rate, and I'm really excited to see where we can take this. As engineers, we're always standing on the shoulders of giants, building on top of what went before, and in this case we've taken years of research from Microsoft Research to pull this off.
I think it's a young girl throwing an orange frisbee in the park.
For me, it's about taking that far-off dream and building it one step at a time. I think this is just the beginning.
So that's one of the applications. And Saqib Sheikh, he's one of our engineers who works in London office. It's interesting, I think, so I have a guy in team in Edinburgh, and he works on the Visual Studio product. And so he talked to me, he went there for testing on, how is the Visual Studio kind of usable from accessibility perspective to the people with visually challenged people. and he sees how they use it, how they use the system. Basically everything is read on the text, and it reads insanely quickly. So he's so used to it. It reads it very quickly. You would struggle to understand. It's 3 times, 4 times the speed. So you would quickly read and able to see what's happening on the screen. But that's and he kind of came up with this concept, and we built an app called Seeing AI, which any one of you can download if you want to play with it. It brings some of these services together, what we're talking about. So I'm just going to quickly do a demo of it.
Who's the unsuspecting suspect? It's not me, is it? Oh, okay.
So let me just do. Good point. Okay. Who would like to be suspect? Who would like to be?
You.
Okay. So this is supposed to be used by visually challenged, so it keeps saying the text.
Meet up.
So let's make sure it's. Okay. So this is the app, which probably Shakib was showing as well before. And I will try, and there are different things it does. So it does things like, it can read short texts, it can read documents and stuff like that. It can detect people.
Person.
So I'm doing person right now, so I'm going to just try.
3 faces. 0 faces. Processing. No
Now-
people could be detected.
So sometimes AI could be.
2 faces. 4 faces. 1 face processing. 37-year-old man wearing glasses looking neutral.
It's doing that, it's using those APIs in the background. I might feel lucky.
I was born in 1981.
Okay, so it's close.
Okay, let's see.
Processing. 31-year-old man with
I
black
can do
hair
that.
looking handsome.
Just be careful what you try on.
And then there are things like, they have introduced currencies, so people struggle with, understanding what currencies they are holding. So you could have, different currencies you can choose, and you can, kind of play with it. So if you want to play with, how these APIs are used, this is a good place to start.
So was it called again?
It's called Seeing AI. So let me just drop this piece.
And it's a great cheat. What I use it quite a lot for is the document to text. So somebody puts a document in front of me, I can quickly get the text out of it that I can then reuse and stuff to put in an email or something. It's really, it's quite handy in that respect.
Is it saying that when your data?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So it's, we talk about things like search looping and stuff.
So it's called Seeing AI. So if you want to download it on your, this app. So I think that it's time to break. Time for break. So any questions before we break?
I saw on one of your slides you had custom search, and it was highlighted. If you could talk a wee bit, what makes a custom search? Just
So you can feed it with your data.
Oh, okay. Right.
So that's the main thing.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever you want to bring your data, so for example, the face detection and the emotions, we are already training the model, so it could work quite well without your data.
Mm-hmm.
But there would be situations where you need your data to actually to make it more meaningful. So this is where you could use custom. Custom is bringing in your data.
So one of the examples, obviously you get JFK. Another one, a good example is we've got quite a lot of legal firms who are trying to do work on digitising all their things like their law books and stuff that they can scan for, but also things that come in, so that they can scan it, search it, and they use that custom search to build their own search engines internally for the text, the sentiment that they're looking for, which as a non-legal person really doesn't mean very much to me. And it's kind of those efficiencies that we look for. And we too are trying stuff where when we write statements of work, and as a service company, probably used to write statements of work that try to cover the customer's risk and your risk. We're trying to do stuff that will actually score our own statements of work based on the text and the sentiment that's inside them to say, actually, this perhaps is a more riskier worded SOW. It needs to go and get checked by somebody, rather than relying on a peer review or some manual process to say, yes, it's good or no, it's not. So yeah, that's where we use some of those custom stuff.
Do you need a lot of data for that? Because if you have a lot of data in your own training models, presumably.
Correct.
The system is as good as your data in some ways, so you need good quality data. It's not just a lot of data, it needs good quality data.
This is the biggest challenge, is trying to find, and I guess it's trying to blow away some of the demystification of it. Think about the thing that sees a banana and knows it's a banana. That's because you feed it thousands upon thousands upon thousands of pictures, and give it feedback to say, yes, that is a banana, or no, it's not. So it's that process of having the data with the right dispersion, the right classifications that you're looking for at a scale that means you're not going to pick up on, or you'll pick up the right things when you run the models. It's when you pick up something that it's not used to and it classifies it as something else because you didn't have that particular thing in your training data. And that's going back to the original point about why it's so prevalent machine learning is because we have generally lots of people have the data with which to do stuff and they can process through it. That hasn't always been the case.
And that brings us to the big point.
I say there'll be time just now while everyone's eating pizza and also at the end where we can do more questions.
Yeah,
Leave
that
it
would
quick.
be-
So yeah, we'll break for 10 minutes or so. Come back. No, no, it's fine. Yeah, no, yeah, no,